Good afternoon, everyone. We have had a very rich experience over the past 2 days with our Successful Strategies in Enrollment Management Institute. I am Sherry Turner. I am the Director of Institutional Success and Support with UNCF's Institute for Capacity Building, and I'm very pleased with the session that we are about to engage in. Over the course of the Institute, we have talked very extensively about enrollment, about admissions issues, about providing strategic approaches to enrollment. We've talked about the importance of building a sustainable enrollment and retention plan, and we've talked about technology. I'm very pleased that we now have an opportunity to gain insight on what presidents think about and how they approach issues of enrollment management. We all know that enrollment is critical to the health and the vitality of our campuses. And for UNCF member schools and other small campuses, enrollment becomes even more important because of the tuition-dependent nature of many of our campuses. And so this conversation is one that will be very timely and very beneficial for all. I am very happy to welcome 4 presidents of our UNCF member schools, and I will introduce them, and then we'll hear more about their campuses in just a moment. But beginning on my immediate left, we have Dr. Henry Tisdale, who is the president of Claflin University. We have Dr. Ronald Carter, president of Johnson C. Smith University. To his left, we have Dr. Lester Newman, who is president of Jarvis Christian College, and we have Dr. Rosalind Clark-Artis, who is president of Florida Memorial University. And so I'd like to begin by saying that, as many of you know, presidents are very engaging and can be quite loquacious. And what we have decided and agreed upon is that given the limited amount of time that we have for this conversation, not everyone will answer every question. We will pause at the end and allow time for our attendees to pose questions for the presidents. But we think that this conversation is one that is very critical, very important, and we're just very pleased that our presidents will be able to share with us some of the challenges, some of the lessons learned, but also some of the rewards that they have experienced during their time at their campuses. And so what I'd like to do is actually pose a question, because we know that among our colleges and universities, there's a great deal of diversity. And so I'd like to begin by asking each president, if you would, to just say a word about your campus, and if there are any particular aspects of your enrollment picture or of your campus composition that is important for members of this audience to know, to just share a little bit about that. Don't be shy.
Thank you, Sherry. Let me begin by stating that Claflin University is the oldest historically black college and university in the state of South Carolina. But of course, we are looking to the future, and our vision is that Claflin University will be recognized as a leading 21st century institution of higher education that develops a diverse and inclusive community of effective, visionary leaders with global perspectives. Currently, we enroll 2,000 students. Students that come from every region of the United States and 20 international countries. We are primarily an undergraduate institution with approximately 1,600 students who are undergraduates and traditional undergraduates. And of course, we have non-traditional students and graduate students as well. We have 3 graduate programs, and we have a number of programs that are 7 or 8 programs that are online as well. So you might say we are online, we are on ground at the university. We also enrolled 90% of our students are African Americans, and of course the other 10%, 5% are international students, and we have Hispanics, Asian Americans and other students on our campus. We are an institution that is growing modestly, and we do have a plan, and there's a team that is responsible for the plan. That's all I'll share at this time, Sherry.
Okay, thank you.
Johnson C. Smith University is a student-centered applied research institution of graduate, undergraduate, and professional academic offerings to 1,500 students. We are an activist university whose core beliefs pivot toward a value-based and liberal education, career preparation, service orientation to the communities surrounding the university, and 150 corporate partnerships. The university is committed to diversity and inclusion, so our enrollment crosses the racial, ethnic, sexual boundaries, and we're very proud of that focus. We have made deliberate decisions to enter new markets of students. We will keep our base of students, our African American students, but we have moved into attracting to campus Latino students as well as international students. We too have about 28 countries represented at Johnson C. Smith University. We have diverse delivery modalities for the campus, online degrees, a comprehensive adult education program, and we are developing innovative graduate programs.
Okay, thank you.
Jarvis Christian College is a small liberal arts institution located in a rural community in East Texas, and that location really defines who we are because it means that we have to engage our students to a certain level. We are a student-centered institution, but we not only engage our students, we believe in engaging the family as well. We try to get the parents involved in the education of their young people because we think it's very important to do that. So from day one, I meet with parents when they come on the campus and other faculty and staff also as well. We believe that that is important to ensure that our students continue that process through from freshman to senior year. Jarvis is a growing institution. Just a little history. When I arrived there in 2012, we only had 266 students. Today we have a little over 900 students, and we expect to have over 1,000 students this coming fall. And that happened because of the engagement of the faculty and staff and the belief in our young people and the importance of getting an education. We are a very diverse institution. We went from probably being less than 2 or 3% of the race to having 20% Hispanics and whites. We also have about 20% adult students that just started 2 years ago. So we're expanding that diversity not only in terms of race and ethnicity, but also in terms of age as well. So we are planning to also grow the adult education program. We hope to be in Dallas this fall. That will give us great opportunities to expand what we're able to do for young people and those who are not so young at Jarvis Christian College.
Thank you.
Well, Florida Memorial University is located in Miami Gardens, Florida, which for those of you who are familiar with South Florida is about halfway between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So we have a wonderful location for our young people. Our enrollment is about 1,500 students, comprised of about 84% students of African descent, African Americans, and 16% international, which makes us the most diverse campus in the entire state of Florida. That is partially attributable, of course, to our location, but it's also a credit to the work of our enrollment team in fostering long and deep relationships, particularly to our sisters and brothers in Caribbean countries. We have significant populations of students from the Bahamas, Jamaica, and a number of other Caribbean countries, as well as broad and deep relationships in South America, and most recently in Europe. So we're seeing a very diverse population of students matriculating on the campus of Florida Memorial University. Our core, however, still is comprised of students who are primarily from South Florida, Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade County, and Broward County. So about 68% of our population is localized, with large numbers of students coming from significant urban cores, Detroit, Chicago, Washington, D.C. So you can imagine combining our Caribbean students, our South American students, our European students with students from large urban cores and those who hail from South Florida. There's a lot happening on the campus of Florida Memorial University. We are the least expensive private institution in the state of Florida. However, we also compete with rather large institutions. For example, the largest public university in the country is 2 blocks from us. I will not name it, as it does not need any further marketing. The largest community college system in the country is also our neighbor. So we have some interesting competitive dynamics in South Florida, which make enrollment challenges pretty unique, and we're looking forward to sharing some of those with you.
Thank you. And as we suspected, your campuses are all very different, and so I imagine that the enrollment dynamics on your campus are very unique to your campus, but I also imagine that there are some commonalities as well. What I'd like us to do is to jump in and address some hard questions, okay? As you all know, enrollment is impacted by a number of different factors, not just what happens on your campus or within your local community or your strategies, but sometimes enrollment is affected by things that are taking place globally or nationally. And so I'd like to talk a few minutes, or like for you to talk a few minutes about national trends or legislation. There is legislation. There are national trends that have the potential to either negatively or positively impact enrollment. And so I'd like to know, which ones do you monitor? Which ones show promise? And then are there any particular trends or issues that keep you up at night? Which ones keep you up at night?
Well, as I indicated previously, Florida Memorial is quite diverse. Part of its diversity is economic diversity. Nearly 68% of our students are first-generation college students. 90% of our students are Pell-eligible students. So you can imagine we are kept up at night following the legislation around the Pell Grant. The increases to the Pell Grant are critically important to Florida Memorial. More importantly, replacing or opening up summer Pell is also very important to us. Like many HBCU campuses across the country, we saw significant enrollment shortfalls during our summer sessions with the elimination of summer Pell. So that's one issue that we watch very carefully, and it absolutely keeps us up at night.
Don't be shy.
Oh, you told us to not answer every question, okay?
Well, for me, there are a couple of issues that keep me up at night, and one that will take place in December when the overtime rule changes, and that's going to impact us greatly, and I'm very concerned about the impact that would have on our recruitment program as well as financial aid. To jump from a little over $23,000 to over $47,000 in terms of overtime pay, it's going to devastate a lot of under-resourced institutions. So that's one that concerns me very greatly.
Okay.
The board and I at the university have concluded that we're going to always face various legislations coming out, policies that we can't control. And so we've decided to focus our energy on developing a flexible and sustainable business model that will allow us to co-create around the challenges that may be coming, because we never know how literate the person in the White House will be concerning higher education, and especially with regard to HBCUs. So we have to have a strong financial base just to persist through any of these challenges, because they're not going to go away.
I would like just to quickly point out that something that is being discussed nationally, especially coming from the Department of Education and from Congress, and that is the uncertainty of what the future of accreditation models might be. I mean, we know what it is today, but we also know that it's, accreditation started with institutions of higher education just wanting to collaborate to have peer review to ensure the quality. And then, of course, with the beginning of the financial aid for veterans, if you will, the GI Bill, there was a need to protect the federal investment. And today, we know the accrediting bodies as those bodies that have evolved over the years into 6 regional bodies, and now they are being pressured to make certain that they have oversight for the dollars that the citizens are spending to provide our institutions with student financial aid and the like. But there's no guarantee that it will be 6 regional bodies or just what it will be. There's a call for much more transparency in terms of the accreditation process. There are some who are suggesting that we need other alternative accrediting bodies. Instead of having regionals, maybe there should be one with one set of standards and the like. There are some who are suggesting maybe every state should get into the act and develop its own accrediting bodies throughout the state. I mention these because it takes a lot of work, and we invest a lot at our institutions trying to respond to the accrediting bodies that as we know it today. And for many of us, it's SACS. But just imagine if we were to have in the next couple of years a change in that model and the investment that we would have to make the adjustment to that new model. And that is what keeps me up at night, because we all struggle with accreditation as it is. And to have an unknown and to make that adjustment, I think it is something we should be concerned about.
Just for the benefit of this audience, if you don't know, accreditation is the process whereby campuses are validated for being institutions that live up to their mission and having the financial means to do so. And so the implications are great. I'm very pleased that UNCF's Institute for Capacity Building actually provides resources for campuses that are undergoing accreditation and are preparing for either their 5-year reviews or for their 10-year reviews. So very happy to be able to do that. I'd like to circle back around and just ask, just following up on the question or the comment related to the changes in overtime pay. This is an audience filled with admissions professionals. Obviously, there's staff members who are traveling on the road. We have admissions professionals, registrars, we have financial aid professionals. And so I wonder how your campus is preparing for that changing legislation that will come about in December. Have you planned for it, or how do you approach that?
We are planning for it, and obviously that planning must involve collaborations. There's no silver bullet to that answer, and we're going to have to be very creative around it. At this point, we do not have a definitive answer to it, but we hope through collaborations we'll be able to manage the process. But it's going to be very tricky, and it may end up being very expensive, which impacts then how far we can go in pushing very creative and innovative enrollment management initiatives.
At Claflin University, I've appointed a task force that is working on this issue. Not just working on it, but we're also trying to learn as much as we can. But we know that the bottom line is that it will have to be a Claflin University model, because there will be issues of affordability. There will also need to be issues that will address, equity and inequities as they might come out of this particular model that we will need to produce. We don't have the answer either, but we're working hard at it. We're learning, we're sharing, and we are getting input from throughout the campus. So in the end, it will be not the president's model, but the Claflin University model.
We're doing the same at Jarvis Christian College. It's one that we're looking at very carefully. Probably will result in some redesign in our approach to recruitment and serving our students in enrollment management. You have to be very creative in order to address this issue. Certainly we'll probably end up with some flex time on how that looks and what impact that would have on the institution and the recruitment and the services of our students. We don't know yet, but it's something that we're looking at very carefully.
Okay, thank you. So one of the topics that has come about on several occasions during the Institute has to do with understanding and identifying the students who are going to be most successful on a particular campus, and students who will benefit most from the education and the resources that you have to offer. There have been conversations about predictive analytics and data-driven approaches to the work that we do, as well as conversations about the importance of having a good, solid enrollment strategy or strategic plan in place. And so I wonder, for each of you, do you have a profile of the student who would be most successful on your campus, or the students who are most likely to persist? How do you, on your campus, how do you or your enrollment teams identify those students? And then what strategies do you have in place to retain students on your campus? In other words, what works best on your campus?
Well, for the past 4 years at JCSU, we have been engaged in a longitudinal study of metacognitive variables that would predict success of students within our environment. We hope to present the white paper very soon. We found out that it does work, so it informs the type of student who succeeds best. We know that there are 4 dimensions that we have to continue to focus on. One, the student's ability to envision himself or herself in an educational environment, have the emotional strength to persist with that vision, have skills and techniques for networking, and then to have some sense of financial stability. We take all of those variables that are related to each of these 4 dimensions, both the cognitive variables as well as the non-cognitive variables, and we're measuring where the 2 meet. And it has become very predictive in terms of the success of the student at Johnson C. Smith University, whether a graduate student, an adult student, an undergraduate student, or even our international students as well. So we're using that as our way for informing our enrollment management.
Is your model specific to your institution?
We hope not. We think we have enough research today, and it's been done in concert with Salisak, who's one of the leading authorities on non-cognitive variables. We think it can be scaled, so we'll answer that question in about another year.
And we look forward to hearing more about that as well.
At Claflin University, I think we, in a similar way, we approach it, and let me say that it begins, of course, with the team, and it is a team approach, and I'm pleased to have several team members here today with me. And it also includes having a plan, having the plan. And in that plan, it should have some suggestions about predictability, beginning with analyzing the students even before the students arrive on your campus. And one thing that's very important we know is that you recruit the student that you believe will be a good fit for your institutions. I mean, just bringing a student and not having any idea of whether there's going to be a good fit you're going to have a low probability of retaining that particular student. Of course, the financial challenges must be understood, and for students who come to the university and have sufficient financial support, or believe there's going to be sufficient financial support, you have a high probability of actually retaining that particular student. It's also important, we found, that students are educated about the institution before they come to the institution, because when the student arrives, and if the student does not find the programs that they are looking for, you're going to lose that student right away. So the programs that you have and how it might relate to individual students is a very important thing to have. And of course, it's important that you have in place the analytics to know which students, as has been mentioned, understand the value of education and has that vision and is going to have the stick-to-itness once they get to your institutions. And of course, once we get them to the institution, we also have in place the student success strategies to help retain the students.
In addition to it, my colleagues have said, what we've seen at Jarvis is that if a student is engaged in high school and come to Jarvis and stay engaged, that student has a tendency to persist. So it's important that you find ways to engage your students, get them involved in activities, clubs, organizations on your campus, and that has been a great predictor for us. Those who are not engaged are generally the ones who do not stay, and it becomes more of a task to get them involved. Another factor that we've seen is that those who come to us at 17 and 18 years old have a tendency to stay, but those who are a little older that come, the retention rate is not that great. Once we get to 24 and older, they stay, but in between, that has become a problem. So we're looking at now how we can address the needs of those students and to keep them involved and to keep them at school.
Dr. Newman, just to follow up on that observation, do you have a sense of why it is that 17 and 18-year-olds are more likely to stay? Is there something about your campus experience or other factors that might play a role in that?
Well, I think they're probably a little more receptive to the kinds of programs and support activities that we have for them. And as students are a little older, they think they know it all sometimes and are not as involved as those 17 and 18-year-old students.
Okay, great. Dr. Artis, do you have a
I
insight?
think my colleagues have been relatively clear, and so I don't want to repeat anything they've said other than the persistence typically is predicted by the emotional intelligence. The reality is students who are mature and understand why they're there are much more likely to persist. Those who have decided on a major before they arrive at the institution as opposed to declaring themselves undecided tend to persist at higher rates. So the extent to which we can assess them very early on and understand better their levels of emotional intelligence and ways that we can engage them fully in the life of the campus, particularly those who don't reside on campus. 50% of our students are on-campus students, and we know that they persist at 2/3 higher a rate than those students who are commuter students. Life intervenes. I mean, the statistics are very, very clear on retention data. So programming around those students who are not necessarily connected to the campus day in and day out is critically important for many of our campuses.
Another factor that we've seen at Jarvis is that those students who enroll early, come to school, start class early, are the ones who persist. Excuse me. You know, we all have at least 12 to 14 days of class that we register students, and if you're at a small school, you're going to use all of those days because you need the revenue. However, it's not good for your students. It's really a disservice to your students when they're allowed to enter class late, enroll late, because they're the ones who are working hard to catch up, and many of them don't have the skill set to do that. So it's important that you work to get your students in earlier than at the beginning of the semester, than rather toward the end of the registration period.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to another tricky question that I hope you will all respond to. And this is something that I was sitting in on one of our sessions yesterday, and it was a session in which people were looking at case studies, and there was an interesting scenario that connects back to this particular question I'd like to ask. And I know, and most of us know, that as presidents, when it comes to enrollment, presidents often have to strike a balance between needs or perspectives of different stakeholders. And so, can you provide examples from your own campus experiences about those places or situations where you've had to find the right balance between either two stakeholders or two approaches that might seem to be competing? If you could provide an example, and then just talk about how you came to the balance.
So it is perhaps an oversimplification to simply say that what appears to be inconsistent probably is not. The reality is that virtually every constituent on a small college campus wants to see enrollment numbers go up because, generally speaking, our revenue is driven by our tuition and fees. And so our faculty and our staff are completely consistent in their desire to have more resources with which to work to enhance our academic experience. The key is that we speak about those things openly and clearly. We have institutional commitments to small class sizes. I believe most of my peers here would agree that the hallmark of a small private HBCU education is a high degree of connectivity between the students and the faculty, a high degree of connection outside the classroom with our staff, the idea that we know who these young people are, that we're able to relate to them as individuals. It's critical that we be who we say we are, and that is high touch, high engagement environments where students who perhaps have come to us less well academically prepared, certainly less financially stable, and often from environments where college has not been the norm, need us to be invested in them at a very, very high level. And so I think while the balance between growing enrollment always has to be struck against a backdrop of doing what we say we do, honoring the missions that we're committed to as small, private, historically black colleges. I think if you have those conversations openly and honestly on your campus, you will find that there is very little disagreement about that. People who choose to work in the environment choose to work there because they believe deeply in our commitments and our values to our students.
Very good.
In terms of enrollment growth, I think that what is necessary that you begin with a plan. And you work the enrollment plan. We all have limitations in terms of resources, human resources, faculty, infrastructure, and the like. In deciding to grow the enrollment, then you have to decide, well, how do we grow the enrollment? Because it may not include having larger classes. It may not include having more adjuncts. There are other strategies that you may want to or look at employing. Currently, and I'm speaking to an example that we're looking at on our campus, we're looking at a faculty compensation study currently. And we expect that it will mean more resources. We're also looking at enrollment growth as well. It may mean that we may have to reduce faculty the need for faculty by looking at some increases in class sizes. We're at, in terms of faculty-student ratio, 1 to 13. And we're raising the question, what would change if we change that from 1 to 15? Is there any data that suggests that we could not be as effective in terms of delivering our academic programs? We know there are exceptions, like some of the introductory courses in mathematics and English and the like. So we're looking at, and we'll make a decision based on the research in terms of our ability maybe to have some larger class sizes. We also have the opportunity to look at, currently we have on-ground, we have online programs, and we don't merge the two very much. But we may need to have a more hybrid approach to delivering programs and courses even to our traditional undergraduate students. So these are strategies that we're looking at and considering in a way that we may be able to grow the enrollment, better compensate the faculty, and yet not jeopardize any academic quality for the students.
Thank you.
Our approach is to cap the traditional student population somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 students, and to move aggressively in graduate education, adult education, competency-based education, stackable certificates. Now, that does require a rethink of the mission of the university, but it's one that the Board of Trustees, the entire university, all have made the commitment to doing, because we see this as a way to sustain the integrity of our roots, but we have to lean forward into the future. So we now see ourselves as a new urban university, and there are 12 defining characteristics for a new urban university, and we are pursuing that aggressively, and we'll land that trajectory during 16 and 17, and then move into the institutional effectiveness to protect the growth that we have experienced.
For us at Jarvis, it was important, as Dr. Tisdale said, to have an enrollment plan. When we got there, the enrollment was very low. We also had accreditation problems. We were on probation. So developing that plan with all of the stakeholders was part of getting that buy-in. It was a 5-year plan, so we're coming to the end of those 5 years. So we'll go back and look at it again, and we're on target with what we agreed to do. So if you do that, then you don't have the issue between the board, because the board was part of that. They approved the plan. So if you do that up front, then you don't have those kinds of issues when the enrollment grows, because that's the intent anyhow. It's part of the plan that you work together with all of the stakeholders.
Okay. Thank you. I wonder whether on your particular campuses, whether you have partnerships with different entities, either with community colleges or governments or international recruiting agencies, any strategic partnerships, dual enrollment, and the like. Is there any particular approach that you have or that works on your campus?
Well, I think all of the variables you identified are intrinsic to what we must do in order to thrive. So I think if you go down the line, we have articulation agreements with community colleges. We have strategic partnerships with corporations, businesses, professional groups. At Smith, we are very pleased to have a unique partnership with 2 other universities, Drexel University and National Louis University, in a coalition called the New Urban Universities, supported by the Gates Foundation. This has been very resourceful, and we have discovered a Drexel University with the number of students there, National Louis given its specific mission, and Smith, that there are some commonalities, so we're beginning to share that base in order to strengthen each other, and then we're selectively choosing some of those unique features that would empower each other. So it's been a very resourceful partnership for the past 3 years.
I'd like just to mention that, we too, and I think I think we all have many of these similar relationships. One of the things that we're looking at now, and we're coming to, I think, finalizing this relationship, not just having articulation agreements with individual 2-year colleges throughout the state, but we are going after having a statewide articulation agreement, so we don't have to negotiate with each of the 2-year colleges. And this will be a first for the state of South Carolina, and we think we're almost there. And I'd like to just point out one particular articulation agreement and MOU that we have with our neighboring 2-year college, and that is an agreement to allow us to bring on in a cooperative way an RN to BSN nursing program for the university, even an agreement which will allow us to use the facilities of this particular 2-year college. And And what is important is that we are taking advantage of a two-year institution that has a very strong and successful RN program, building on this initiative and even asking the state of South Carolina to support the program as well.
So at Florida Memorial, we believe deeply in the value of partnerships for many, many reasons, one of which certainly is enrollment growth. We have not had the advantage of being able to collaborate as fully with our community college system as many of my sister institutions represented here on the panel have, because as I pointed out earlier, the largest community college system in the country, Miami-Dade Community College, is not acting like a community college. They are offering four-year degrees, and therefore they're competing head-to-head with us in our School of Education, in our School of Business, and in our School of Arts and Sciences. And so 2+2 agreements are not as easy to come by in South Florida as they might be for many of my colleagues. We've had to go broader and deeper to be able to establish relationships. For example, we've just joined the California Community College Transfer Initiative. For students who are in California and who may be students of color and or minority students who seek opportunities at historically black colleges, they do not have access to that opportunity in the state of California. We will provide a wonderful opportunity for those students to transition to a historically black college in South Florida, which reflects very much the cultural norms that they've come from in California and other spaces, and allows them some level of familiarity in a warm, sunny climate. We also have partnerships downward, both in terms of with our high school and our school boards, but more with specific organizations. We are the first and only college or university in the country to have a formal partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So graduates of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program enjoy the benefits of an MOU with Florida Memorial University. We partner with the 5,000 Role Models, which is an organization for students grades A through 12, a mentoring organization for young men of color, Hispanic and African American. And so by striking those kinds of partnerships that really create a pipeline into Florida Memorial and really helps us to target the kinds of students we want to serve, those things have been very beneficial to us in terms of thinking about our enrollment management plan and our target populations.
Well, we have the traditional and partnerships that you've already heard about, but I'll speak of two briefly that have worked for us. One is that we established a relationship with about 20 of the superintendents of school districts within the area. When we got there, we noticed that we were not getting very many students from the local area, particularly the local high school. So we invited the superintendents to campus. We talked about common issues. We worked on things together. We invite the students and faculty and staff to participate in various programs and activities. But one of the things that we do that has helped tremendously to get students to the campus is that we give each of the superintendents at least 5 scholarships that they name, that they can give to the students who meet our criteria. And that has helped tremendously. And so we're getting students that probably would not have looked at Jarvis Christian College earlier because they were able to get it from the superintendents. And it gives them a little prestige when they have the authority to give a scholarship as long as it's based on our criteria. We also made a concerted effort to recruit more international students. That's a growing population for us. We have relationships with Nigeria and just developed a relationship with Benin. As a matter of fact, I just returned from Cotonou, Benin, doing the commencement address for the International Model School. And we have a partnership with them, and as a matter of fact, had a great recruiting trip. We got about 5 of the top students out of that school, including the valedictorian and the salutatorian that will be coming to Jarvis this fall. So building those relationships have helped us to expand opportunities for young folks to come to Jarvis and also to give us another avenue to recruit students.
Dr. Newman, I'm glad that you mentioned international students. And earlier, when you were all describing your campuses, you made reference to international students. Often campuses, as an enrollment strategy, will seek to increase its international student population. I wonder if there are any particular nuances to such an approach that your campus may have experienced or seen.
Well, it's Smith. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Okay. At Smith, the emphasis is on networking. It's extremely difficult to do that just simply sitting back and not engaging the key leaders abroad to become that funnel for the institution. So it does require traveling. It does require using international faculty on campus who can open the doors for you as well. So I would say the emphasis must be on networking, reaching out.
I would also like to add that one of the things we've observed in recent years is that in terms of having a strategy of attracting international students, there are two things to keep in mind. One, not to put all of your eggs in one basket, because things do change very quickly. And the second is to, if we're, with enrollment management, we're always thinking about tuition revenues. Our strategy has been turning more to focusing on students who bring resources rather than students who really, just takes a lot of resources to educate them. So keep those two things in mind. I would like to point out one other initiative that we've had at our university for the last few years, because it relates to enrollment management, it relates to recruitment, and even retention. But it begins with relationships we have with now 5 or 6 school districts in South Carolina to provide a pre-collegiate academy on our campus during the summer. And these are middle school students. And we have been able to form the type of partnerships where the school districts have agreed to bring the resources necessary to support their students for the pre-collegiate academy. Not only are we bringing resources to the institution, but we're also beginning to contact these students early on. And I think the research shows that those students that you recruit, that you've had a relationship for a number of years before they get there, are also highly likely to remain at your institution.
Developing
Just,
the, yes, please.
There's another area that I encourage all of you to look at very carefully, and that's partnership with Department of Social Services foster care. The university now has the most comprehensive foster care program in the country. We have partnerships with foster care departments all over the United States, and they're bringing these students to campus. Now, granted, you have to have a seamless network of support services in place for them, but do not let that frighten you. These students are absolutely stunning. Once they have a network of trust, you'll be surprised how alive they become and how they persist on campus. And in many cases, they bring the money with them through the state support. So don't underestimate the foster care system. It is a new market.
And going back to the question related to international recruitment, it's important also, depending on what country you're dealing with, is to have a relationship with the American embassy in that country. They can delay students getting a visa, and as you know, what is going on now with students coming from certain countries, there is a tendency not to support them coming to this country. So building that relationship early on is very important to be able to get students the visa they need to come to your school, come to the country.
I want to ask one more question, and then we will open it up to the audience for questions. And I just wanted to go back to enrollment strategy. Ms. Arlene Cash was our opening speaker yesterday and talked about ways or strategies to really capture students' attention and recruit them. Some colleges do so through social media. And of course, what we learned yesterday is doing it in a way that captures students' attention is always beneficial. But one of the things that we know is that there are many external companies that specialize in lead generation. And so I wonder whether any of your campuses have relied on external companies or firms to do lead generation, and if that has been an approach or a strategy that has been helpful for you.
let me say that at Claflin University, we're in our first year of a partnership with a company to provide lead generation. And of course, we're doing so for the purpose of course, expanding the pool, expanding our geographic territory and reach for students, and also to even strengthen the academic profile of the student population at Claflin as well. We're in our first year, and it begins, of course, with a partnership where you are bringing in someone who has knowledge and even the support in terms of technology to help you identify and reach out to this student population, expanded student population. And what we have seen thus far, and we have not finished one cycle yet, and I must say this also, that what we've seen is, and we knew this going in, that we would have to bring in additional support for our on-campus staff, and not full-time, but part-time for a particular period in order to respond to the large number of applications. But at every point in the funnel where we're looked, we've seen the outcome to be what we wanted it to be in terms of the number of new applications, in terms of the expansion of the geographical outreach for recruitment. We see more diversity in that student population. In terms of the academic profile, we see that that is up in terms of the total number of students who have already committed, in terms of paying the deposit. That is also a positive. So at every point in the funnel that we have looked, we're seeing the outcome that we desire to have. But we have not enrolled those students yet. They didn't show up for the first class yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it?
Well, I will.
So we'll invite you back this time next year to find out how that works.
Well, let me tell you.
Oh,
We're in our second year of a partnership, very similar. We engaged a company to assist us with lead generation, developed a student profile, geographic radius from which we wanted to recruit, and deployed. And quite frankly, we saw record numbers of applicants and leads generated, and what we found out is precisely what Dr. Tisdale indicated. The need for internal resources to respond to those leads, to close on those leads and applicants is critically important. We also needed to deploy earlier. There was some mention by a panelist earlier about the earlier a student makes the decision and commits to your institution, and so in our first year, our maiden voyage, we perhaps deployed later in the recruitment cycle than is typically indicated. This year, we deployed earlier, and I'm very pleased to say we have broken the records. Part of that is because I have a very effective team, some of whom are represented here in the room. And part of it is because we got a little smarter, a few lessons learned after year one. We have exceeded our record both for admitted students, certainly for applicants, a record number of applicants, and for those admitted. Now, the proof will be in the pudding here in a couple of days, but I'm pretty excited to report that we're trending quite nicely. One of the things that we have learned, however, is there's nothing these companies do that you can't do internally. You just have to learn the process. And so if you engage them, I would certainly encourage you to study very carefully how it is that they do what they do. There's nothing we can't master. We just need to understand the rules of the game and the process. The deployment of technology, the management of leads, the timeline, and the reporting is critically, critically important. And so I would urge you to take a look at it, but be careful. These are not long-term relationships. These are an opportunity for you to learn and build your own internal capacity and be able to deliver that service internally, as opposed to depending on an external resource. You know your students better than any external partner could.
very good. Okay. So at this time, we're going to pause and invite you, our audience, to ask questions or pose questions. And we realize that there's not a microphone, so I will, if you ask, I will repeat it so that everyone can hear. Yes, please.
Hi. Dr. Carter, you spoke about the foster care system and how you all are taking advantage of it in your enrollment cycle. What are some provisions or elements that you all have put in place to kind of work with those students to ensure seamless transition from high school or any foster care system to be collegiate students and graduate in the future?
We engaged initially the Department of Social Work to develop a full wraparound strategy for identifying the students who are aging out of foster care, what the resources needed would be, and what the life cycle would be for these students. So we did our homework early on, and in asking the Department of Social Work to guide that, we were very successful then to moving to all of the departments across the country in Department of Social Services. They have those contacts. And it's just been extremely successful, so much so now the Ensoro Foundation that supports emancipated foster kids will send them to the campus for a summer program before they head out to various institutions, and that gives us the opportunity to have the first touch with them. But again, keep in mind, you have to have a comprehensive support service that's wrapped around the students, but it's an invaluable new market.
Thank you. Very good question. Yes, Mr. Montgomery.
I must say that I don't work on college campus, but when you all talked about what keep you up at night, I work for the College Board. I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. But the state of North Carolina passed House Bill 873. That would keep me up at night, as a small, independent campus. Because now the UNC system, 3 of the UNC system schools will offer tuition at $500 per semester for students.
Can you just tell us what is the House bill for those of?
Sorry. House Bill 873 is some legislation that just passed in North Carolina where the public universities, so there were 5 initially, two of the HBCUs that were involved dropped out, 1 remained in. So Elizabeth City is a part of it. You got Western Carolina, and you also have UNC Pembroke.
That's
So
correct.
those are the 3 schools that are in this. So the legislation in North Carolina has decided to take over their operating expenses for the next so many years, 5 years or so. And now the institutions will only apply $500 tuition to students as they enroll. So then now that, to me as a parent of a high school student, begin to wrestle with the value proposition, right? And how as an independent institution are we going to wrestle with that? Because now I have to now be able to explain why should I pay $27,000, $30,000 when I could really just pay $1,000 per semester in tuition.
Well, since Smith is located in North Carolina, there are a couple of things we need to keep in mind. When you talk about the value proposition, that will also include location. It also will include the quality of academic programs offered at the institutions. So I'm not as threatened by that as something else I thought you were going to also note about the legislation, that it will reduce the out-of-state tuition, and that's where we compete with those coming out of state. So we're watching that very carefully. But I also know the nature of state governments, and it depends who will be in office next year and year after next. And the fundamental question will have to be answered: how will they sustain that model? It is not a financial model that will persist. Now, we will look at this for the next 4 years, but I'm willing to bet you during that cycle, there's going to be a rethink of that. So we are looking at it, but it clearly is not keeping me up at night.
I saw a hand right over here. You, and then we'll come forward here.
Good afternoon. David Page, Dillard University. If you could you give us your thoughts about, currently right now in D.C. on the Hill, there's pending conversation, negotiated rulemaking about the issue dealing with curriculum college as far as whether or not, once a student completes their degree, if they feel that they were not successful, they would have to pay, we're not able to have to pay back the student loans. And so if that moves forward beyond negotiated rulemaking and comes into fruition, what I can only imagine what that might mean for some of us. If you could just give your thoughts to that.
You are guru.
Well, let me say this, that, there are a number of things that sometimes get into the works, and we believe that that as historically black colleges in particular, sometimes we take on students that come as first generation low income. They take more to educate, and they come with less networking, and they come with less understanding of what it means to get an education and to apply that in terms of high-paying, high-skilled jobs and the like. So we take that risk on, and if the legislation moves forward, it could negatively impact our institutions disproportionately. That is a possibility. But on the other hand, I don't want us to be too afraid in terms or have any concerns that our graduates are going to feel any less prepared than those coming out of other institutions. There was a study done by the Gallup Corporation in 2015, a study of about 60,000 graduates, alumni, black graduates and others. And this is what was discovered, especially when they looked in particular at the African American graduates, the black graduates. What they found was that those graduates felt and they believed that they were much better off socially and financially, so that they had gotten really a very strong education from these historically black colleges. They were very satisfied. They thought they got the caring and the mentoring that they needed at these institutions. They found the institutions culturally supportive. And so overall, it was a little surprising from this study that the black students who had attended our historically black colleges really felt that they'd gotten a great deal from these institutions. So I wouldn't have too much concerns. I think we can respond, and I think we can deliver graduates who can be competitive.
I have to add something to that. The reality is numbers don't lie, people do. And so we have to be conversant about the data that makes the case for historically black colleges and universities. The reality is that when you disaggregate the graduation rates of many of our majority peers, you will find that the graduation rates for students of color are in the single digits. So before you swallow too many bullets about the job that HBCUs do, you should take a look at the data. When you talk about articulating a value proposition, as a parent and a price-sensitive parent, because many of our students, of course, are socioeconomically disadvantaged, I am going to be looking for a value. But at the end of the day, I want to look for an institution that is going to ensure that my student is actually going to graduate. And we are graduating students of color at a much higher rate than our majority school peers, and we don't need to be apologetic about that. We need to be educated about that and be able to cite the data and cite the statistics as a part of that value proposition. I think too often our narrative is not undergirded by the numbers, and the numbers are actually out there to demonstrate we are doing a very, very good job with a particular population of students.
Very good, thank you.
I just
Dr.
want
Carter.
to emphasize, you're absolutely right about the use of data and predictive analytics, and there's a woman sitting over there who knows that, and I hope that you'll take advantage of her knowledge base. We've got to become more proficient in using predictive analytics and data to inform the narrative, and the more we do that, the more we can manage the conversation at the national, state, and local levels.
Okay, thank you. Our time is up, but I hope that our panelists, if you recognize that there are other questions, and I hope that our panelists would make themselves available to answer those questions. I do want to just offer each of you an opportunity to share some closing words, and here's the closing question or statement in 5 words or less. What keeps your enrollment professionals up at night?
Unrealistic expectations of the president.
The enrollment
What was
target
that?
that we set for them.
Can you say that again, Dr. Artis?
The
Unrealistic
enrollment target
expect-
we set for them.
That's right, unrealistic expectations of the president.
Okay.
I think it's been said.
What more can you say? I do.
I think when you put it in terms of the expectations from the plan, the president, and the like, I think, and I'm glad that our enrollment team stays up at night and is concerned about that.
We can sleep.
I appreciate that.
I do want to say, too, that I push my team for data all the time. I think it's very important that they understand the importance of data and getting it right. So when I call the meeting, they know what I'm calling the meeting about. So that keeps them up at night because I need the data to make the decision.
So we probably ought to end with just a thank you to the enrollment folks. This is a hard job. You're on the road, away from your families, pushing against us. Good work.
Well, thank you all. This has been very helpful, very informative, great conversation, and great insight. We're going to, I think our next session starts in Ballroom B, which is right next door. But thank you so much for this. We know that as presidents, you have many sleepless nights, and enrollment is probably just one T90 bit, as my grandmother would say, of what keeps you up at night. But we are so thankful for your leadership and for your vision and the support that you give those who work with you to ensure that students who matriculate at your campuses are successful. So thank you, and thank you all to all of our professionals who are here.